Hey, what's the difference between Leinster's defense and a barrister's? Eventually, the barrister's one rests. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone who on his last appearance earned his 68th Harpin cap. On his next one, it'll be his 70th, but I can't quite work out what number he's on right now. So I'll just say welcome back to Mr. Tom Coleman.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Rich. The less said, the better.
Indeed. And also with us is someone here for his 45th pod. And I'm sure if I had time, I'd come up with some kind of innuendo for that number as well. But we do have a rugby match to harp on. So for now, I'll just say hello to Mr. Rich Mifsud.
Good evening, lads.
Great to see you both. Right, let's crack on with that feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Glasgow Warriors in the quarterfinals of the 24-25 Investec Champions Cup. It was played at the Aviva Stadium on Friday, April the 11th. For the second week in a row, the weather somehow managed to behave around Leinster's kickoff time. And also for the second week in a row, it was Sam Prendergast getting things started as he kicked towards the South Stand, Tom.
Yeah, well, I suppose this pod could go a million different ways. I'm sure we could speak about Glasgow's ineptitude or Leinster ruining the Heineken Cup with having scoreless matches, but I'm going to just be completely Leinster-centric and just concentrate on our 5 tries in the first half.
That's what we try to do.
And just a couple of other mini highlights in between. So hopefully it's good listening for Leinster fans. Yeah, look, we started quite well, putting Glasgow under pressure. One sign that was early on, and it really was the tail of the match for me, or part of the tail of the match, was how poor Glasgow were exiting from their own 22. They were sort of getting no distance and they had no plan B. And that really came home to roost in for much of the match. A couple of highlights in the first few minutes, apart from Leinster's pressure, was Sam's put a spiral kick in that was like 15 metres from his own line, just to the nearly 22, and on Glasgow, just an unbelievable relief of just, it wasn't even under pressure, to be honest with you. But Leinster going forward just on that, Sam Prendergast, James Lowe, Jordie Barrett, and I'm thinking of somebody else, Gibson Park's monster box kicks, like somebody made the point online about the 4 horsemen of the kick apocalypse or something like that. But that is really hard to defend when you've got that many options, and I'm not even including the likes of Jamie Osborne if he has to slot in. So Leinster won the kicking duel as well, and kept, as well as Glasgow having no exit. If they could only have one of those 4 guys to relieve some pressure on them, they would have done a lot better. It looked like we got in earlier on. Jordie Barrett got a try, and it looked like it was going to be 7-0, and the little eagle-eyed TMO spotted a knock-on in contact by Ringer, and the right call, in fairness it was, and it was brought back for no score. Not long after that, after the first 10, 12 minutes of Leinster building pressure, much like they did in the first 10, 12 minutes against Quins, made a trademark Ringer hit on George Horn, and it really put pressure on Glasgow again, touching back on it there. Poor exits, it gave us a bit of a line out. Off that line out, Jordie Barrett again, I'm going to mention his name once or twice. He nearly put Tommy O'Brien through. Lovely little pop pass on the inside. O'Brien set piece move coming in off the line and nearly got through, but it was a good tackle. But we had a few more phases after that. I think Sam put Joe McCarthy through, and he put a nice pop pass through. We thought Joe McCarthy was very busy in our phase play and carried well throughout. And then Barrett again got involved. A nice pass to Tommy O'Brien, and then it seemed like an easy dot down for Max Deegan in the corner to make it 5-0, and then a great touchline kick by Sam to make it 7-0. But really, no territory for Glasgow in those sort of first 13, 14 minutes. Lots of involvement by the Leinster pack in carrying, and Prendergast and Barrett looked like that combination that I'd seen in the flesh in Bristol in one of the pool games. Looked like it had sort of left off, or taken off where it left off. Then the only downside was in that whole series of play was Jack Conan had to go off. He did appear on the big screen at one stage and to be wincing quite badly, so it seemed like it wasn't as bad as, hopefully not as bad as it first seemed when we went off. Um, Other than that, Tommy O'Brien tried a little kick through at one stage on the near side. Um, didn't got it quite wrong, and Kyle Rowe was able to get up the wing. The reason I only mentioned that is, again, mentioning Jordie Barr. Great scramble to defence to get back and cover, and then sort of have to half dummy him on the line and casually kick a 70-metre kick all the way into the Glasgow near the 22, and Glasgow again scrambled poorly, and it ended up a Leinster line out in well into the Glasgow half. So like that was like a 60, 70-metre gain from Barrett. Absolutely fantastic. Shortly after that, my ribs are still sore looking at Caelan Doris getting emptied on that hit. I would be in the Mater Hospital for the week, and the rest, I think. But Caelan Doris just got up. The Glasgow guy, Samuel, I think his name is, he was more shook from it. He probably felt like he ran into a brick wall. But the reason I mention it is obviously it eventually leads to a try, but Doris was the next man up with the next ruck on the far side to get a turnover. That's just ridiculous, really. You know what I mean? He should have been, struggling to get up for a few minutes after that hit, because it just caught him clean and looked like it winded him, or it could at least leave you. That would have you doubled up. But no, he was able to get up, get back into position in the next phase, and get a turnover. That immediately led to pressure. There was some play down the near side before Sam sort of flicked it to Lowe, and then Lowe tried to flick it back inside to Ringer. And Adam Hastings, who I'll mention his name once because I still remember the game before he left for Gloucester over in Glasgow, when he was being a right sanctimonious little bollocks, excuse my French, and giving it to Leinster over in but he went a bit AWOL, so little apples. It's like, mate, you didn't turn up. It's all right giving it socks over in Scottstown and giving it lip, but he was nowhere to be seen the weekend, and he rightly got a yellow card for a deliberate knock on, and it was
I've never seen someone look so guilty. He was written all over. Wasn't even trying to hide it.
It felt like those old volleys at Wimbledon, Mats Wallander and those. If you people old enough to remember guys like that, and Stefan Edberg at the net slapping it down, and it was a penalty try and a yellow card, and that made it 14-0. And before I go on and mention the last few tries of the half, I think this where Glasgow have to look at themselves is, we can. It's hard to balance up how good Leinster were, and how much Glasgow gave up is probably the wrong word, but I think that was the moment in the game where we really punished them in this yellow card period, with a couple of tries, and the arse fell out of them. They just, for starters, they didn't look like a team that they looked beaten before they came out of the dressing room, which is hugely surprising for a team you would have thought they would have got the monkey off their back, winning out in South Africa in the URC, and getting a knockout game one in Europe. As I said, I promise I wouldn't spend time trying to work out the mindset of Glasgow at the weekend, so we'll concentrate on our own side. As I said, we got a couple of tries in the yellow card period. Sam made a hell of a break just outside the 22. Nice sidestep, showed his pace, that secret pace that he seems to have. And it was great pressure, lovely little kick through, and it was good pressure from him and Gibson Park. Again, work rate, getting up to put pressure on that. Rowe was under pressure, and he ended up having go over the line and ended up a 5-metre scrum for Leinster. Why I touched on Glasgow's not getting off the bus, this try was ridiculously easy. Like, it was just, there's no excuse for this. I know Gibson Park is very good at that sort of blindside pop pass that he does wide, but he can put them on a sixpence, but it was just too easy for Leinster. Just, there was no pressure on him, and there was no pressure at the centre, and there was no pressure at wide, and it was just, it's like they were playing against no defence in that move. So it was scrum, ball in, 9 looked up, flicked it to Lowe, dotted down, just ridiculously easy, and that made it 19-0. I think that was one of the only conversions that Sam missed. And as I thought, it sort of epitomised Glasgow's play in that time. We had a bit of to and fro for a while after that, but Leinster still had Glasgow under a huge amount of pressure. It did look like any time we would go up, get up, and our it was the best our sort of connected play between backs and forwards look this season. I thought we flowed quite well. Lovely pop passing, always trying to make something happen. And there was a lot of nearly moments where we nearly got through. So Leinster were willing to try stuff. Um, Tommy O'Brien, who got selected for this match, and in fairness, himself and Deegan justified Nina Barra and Cullen's faith in them by giving really good performances. I thought, Deegan was great at the line out as an option, and he filled that sort of wide back row role quite well that sometimes we see Jack Conan in. Did very well. And Tommy O'Brien obviously ended up getting a try for our fourth try. It was a Glasgow scrum initially that sort of went blind, but they ran into a brick wall with again, Jordie Barrett mentioned his name. Jordie Barrett and himself went for a double poach on the ball, and it was Jordie to come up with the ball. It was one of those nights where he was everything was coming up rosy from Gibson Park put a nice little grubber through again, and again I'll mention is Glasgow, just a poor exit again, bringing the pressure back on top of them. Simple line out. The line out went well all night. It was that sort of patent dummy maul that we see from Leinster. Gibson Park again flicked it into Barrett into Sam, and it was a nice step in from Tommy O'Brien, who was coming at really good pace, just able to push off one leg in at the other, and made it 26-0. And Sam converted, and yeah, that sort of just summed up how dominant Leinster were in all facets in the first while. As we expected, Porter came on quite early. We did the old reverse substitution. Healy had a good stint when he was on, and maybe this is something we might see a bit more as the season goes, trying to manage Porter's minutes rather than him starting and coming off in 71 or 72 minutes. It seemed to have quite worked well. And the last try before the half was a Hugo Keenan try. James Lowe got taken slightly early in the air. I didn't realise it at the time live at the game, but certainly when I was looking back at the game, the ref called as well. Strangely enough, the penalty didn't really find touch, but again, here I am repeating myself, poor exit by Glasgow again. At this stage, Hastings was back on after the yellow card. Off our own line out then, with lovely dynamic carry by Doris, who just made a massive impact when he comes on. Like, just his numbers is just through the roof what he does. Big dynamic carry by him, another big dynamic carry by Lowe. Joe McCarthy was very busy again in carrying. He tends to get those 2, 3, 4 yard carries all the time where he sucks in a few defenders. But it's the other stuff he's very good at, presenting the ball back, and for next quick ball, he's quite strong and quite good at doing that. After Joe carried, there was a nice short carry by Jordie. It was more of a hard carry. He was floating on the outside a lot, but this was sort of a classic 12 hard carry. With those series of carries and phases, Glasgow, I'd say, if you look at the game, Glasgow were looking in at the ruck, ball watching, you know what I mean? So if that tends, your body language is turning in, you tend to get sucked in towards where the ball is and where the ruck is. RG had a lovely carry and offload, which he had plenty of through the game. He's always looking for that moment. He's a real weapon for continuity ball. Gibson Park, after his offload, Gibson Park got it to Sam, and delicate little kick through, because as I said, Glasgow were both rushed up and were sort of facing in towards the ruck, and Keenan was sort of seemed like he was able to ghost in behind him, and he had plenty of time to just see what way the ball would bounce before he dotted it down. But yeah, it was good. That was a really good team try, because Leinster manipulated what Glasgow were doing, but a lot of really good, strong, hard carries, and Sam made an easy conversion, and that made it 33-0. Absolutely outstanding half. I think I've already, just to sum it up, I think we're and looking forward to the next opposition against Northampton. On that first half, just the kicking options Leinster have to relieve pressure, even though pressure is a loose word to use Glasgow's performance the weekend. But I said Lowe's left peg and Barrett's kicks and Sam's spirals and Gibson Park's box, because he's become a really good box kicker. And the other thing I noticed was, and even when Glasgow did get ball, Leinster were able to blitz through on that second line of attack. It's a lot what Northampton do. Finn Smith tends to pull that pass back all the time. So that went really, really well in the first half, and it sort of shut down anything that Glasgow were able to offer. And we ended up, I think, with 62% territory in the first half. Glasgow had won really no facet of the game. Sometimes you look at the Munster game the weekend, Munster scrums went well against Bordeaux, but Glasgow, no facet of what they played went well. Just dominant in every facet of the game. And the only cloud in the first half was Conan's injury, and Deegan, Tommy O'Brien, and Barrett 100% justified their selection. Yeah, so that left it 33-0 at half time, and the nil series continued.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I was disappointed with Glasgow. They do have a quite a serious injury list,
Yeah.
but especially in the center. But still, they've had like the past year, and one of the reasons they won the URC is because they have this natural kind of team ethic where there's a game that they can click into. But I just wondered with their selection, they had that lad Cancelliere. They had him on the bench, and I thought that was a strange move because I thought he could be someone that could make something happen in the early stages when they needed to get a foothold into the game. So it really didn't, and then you said like their exits were poor, and it's almost like they were just an inevitability about their play, but you can only play what's in front of you, and there were still immense performances. I mean, you two are going to talk about Jordie, I think, enough between you, but I mean, I can only add that it was just an amazing performance. He was doing turnovers for fun at some stages. I mean, it was just incredible. Like you say, there was other performances. Tommy O'Brien, Max Deegan, they were going to Max a lot in the lineouts as ever. Caelan Doris, yeah, like I mean, we used to say about Jamie Heaslip, who I think was on the RTE panel as well beforehand. We used to say he had Wolverine blood, but I think Doris is made out of just pure vibranium, or something like that, and what he does going around the pitch. But yeah, that Conan injury, apparently he did have a niggle. They were saying afterwards he had a niggle going into the game in the shoulder, and he just activated, and he was kind of wincing when they went to him after he went off. Hopefully it's not too serious. He did the press conference afterwards. So we'll see what the report is on Monday, because he's having a season of his life, and we hope it's not, he can see it through to the end of the season. What did you make of it, Rich?
Yeah, pretty much as described by Tom. It was totally dominant. Glasgow were undercooked, and you'd have you'd have to say that that their injuries didn't help. But even so, you expect some grit from them. And in fairness, they did put something up to us in that second half, which I'll touch upon now. But yeah, it was just totally dominant, and they it's like they really didn't turn up as expected, and they've got pedigree to be able to turn up. It's not as if their mentality, they're strong mentally, but on this occasion they were just overpowered, overplayed, overthought, and that's pretty much what happened to them in that first half. Whether the previous week's nilling of Harlequins had anything to do with their mindset going into this one, possibly, I don't know. But we all know that the top 2 inches do matter, and as soon as they went down a few scores, that's probably why they pretty much lost heart in that game. So yeah, a first half that 33-0, and it could have been more. But yeah, but like you said, you can only play what's in front of you, and you don't always exploit what's the chances that you're given, and yet we did quite methodically and very effectively. So yeah, very happy that first half.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ignore the what the opposition were doing, but you still also have to mention the European scene. It seems it's definite European mindset that Leinster were in. It's they were clicked in. This is they're wearing a different jersey. It's a different competition. It's a step up from the URC, but Leo always calls URC bread and butter. The Champions Cup is a step up, and you can see it in the way the team approaches it, the way they play, and pretty much every play, every set piece that they have raised their game, and they got the scoreline they deserved at the end of that half, 33-0. Leinster 33, Glasgow 0. Well, before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Ruggersphere, like our YouTube channel, where on Tuesday you'll find a bonus chat where we look at some of Leinster's best imported players over the years. To get access to our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. If you happen to be on Substack, please subscribe to our channel there. It's totally free. And as ever, be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. Now, generally, Rich tends to be given what is called the shitty half to review. And I suppose technically you could say the same applies here as we had so few tries in that second half, Rich. It was Glasgow getting it underway with Adam Hastings taking the kick off.
Yeah, if you really want to see how good we were on Friday night, forget the analysts, forget the statistics, forget the pundits. They were so good that they even managed to nullify my incredible ability to jinx a half of rugby. But all joking apart, the question I posed myself at halftime is how are we going to come out second half? How are we going to manage this? We're 33-0 up. What's our mindset going to be? We've been not quite in such an extended lead in the past in crucial games and lost our way a wee bit. All these things play into minds. But I mean, the next few minutes, 3-4 minutes, it was pretty much our defense epitomized what we've been doing throughout that first half, and how incredibly effective we are at nullifying and frustrating opposition. Sometimes I use these visual analogies, and it's almost like like one of these sci-fi movies with the blob coming towards you, and it's pretty much unstoppable. It must be awful to play against, because you look at how you've got about 3 or 4 players if you're attacking trying to resource a ruck, but when you look up, there's only about 1, maybe 2 of ours on the other side in defense, and everybody else is standing up and coming at you. And every time you pass, there's somebody in your face. And those first 4 or 5 minutes in that second half just pretty much epitomized how we do work that defense, which has clearly now been cemented in the way that we play. So just by way of highlighting the point, that first 4 or 5 minutes, although they were Glasgow possession primarily, and they came into and were thrown out of our 22 and our half on a number of occasions. It all ended up with a jackal by Tommy O'Brien after we'd forced them into overextending. One of their players got isolated and got turned over, and that was pretty much it. It's when you watch it again without the excitement and the nerves of the game live. It's almost like an orchestra playing. Everybody knows his place, and they're all cogs in a far bigger wheel, and that's what the defense is. So anyway, we like I say, we turn the ball over. Play carries on for another couple of minutes. So 47th minute, Ronan Kelleher, who I thought had a particularly good return match to first team action after his injury. He turns over Glasgow possession in a central position near their 10-meter line. Lovely pass out wide to Sam by Josh van der Fleer. Excuse me. Who's got James Lowe and Max on his outside. He doesn't use them as carriers, but pretty much uses them. They're both in catching positions, and quite viable in that. So this enables him to rush forward. He gets to the 22, the Glasgow 22. He recycles. Then Jamison releases our good friend Erke Sneeman, who carries down the middle before offloading to Big Joe on his inside. Then it's back to Jamison, who's passing to Caelan. He carries down hard down the middle, ties in the Glasgow defence, who then are now shortened numbers on their left, because we're keeping them honest by having people on the outside. So we go wide right. So rather, they are assuming we're going to go wide right because we've got an overlap on that side. But instead, when Jamison passes to Ringer carries on, plays dummies towards the right, and then cuts a lovely line to the inside, and then uses his strength to get past 2 or 3 defenders and crashes over for a try almost on the posts. So that was easily converted by Sam. Very well worked try from transition ball. Like I say, everybody seemed to know their excuse me, their way across the pitch for that one. It was filled with guile, with strength, with accuracy, an awful lot of things that we haven't been seeing earlier on in the season, but they seem to be clicking as of last week, and that was very much in evidence on Friday night again. Recurring theme from the half, as indeed it was for the match, was the defense, and that continued for the next few minutes. And that leaves us to another of the highlights of the half, which is the 54th minute when Robbie came on for his 100th cap in a Leinster jersey, to a very well deserved round of applause. Play continues. Sustained Glasgow pressure. This is just another highlight of the magnificence of Jordie Barrett. So they set up the maul. Our very good friend Mr. Hastings, who, to transpose something from football onto rugby, has one of the most slappable faces ever. Gets absolutely scragged by Jordie, pulled off his feet, and with a little help from his friend James Lowe, like a little rag doll, and he's bundled into touch. And I absolutely love that. If for no other reason, but just because it was Hastings. But anyway, so play goes on. A couple of minutes later, we get a penalty in midfield after a pretty fortuitous one. They knock on, and the player ahead of the knock handles the ball. So we get a pen, go for the corner, 5 meters out. And this is another of those very easy tries that Glasgow conceded on the night, pretty much like Tom alluded to in that first half commentary. So Deegan secures the ball. We set up the maul. Then pretty much Josh peels left, passes to Dan Sheehan, who had the freedom of the city of that left wing, and pretty much canters across for a very easy set piece score. So all of a sudden, that's converted beautifully from the touchline by Sam, and so now we're 47-0 up with 58 minutes on the clock. So we enter the fourth quarter, and pretty much the next 14, 15 minutes or so, I would describe in a couple of quick phrases: delightful defense, and Mangan is an absolute bloody menace. He came on, his little cameo was very, very good. Thoroughly enjoyable, really good in the air, really, really strong. He's come on in leaps and bounds this season, and I look forward to seeing an awful lot more from him rather. So, like I say, an exhibition on how to manage a game in defensive mode, just keep them at arm's length, whilst also inflicting damage on them. 75th minute, a croc roll on Jordie, pretty much on the lower limb. Thankfully, he was fine and nothing major. And so we get a pen from that. We got a touch about 15 meters out on the left. A couple of big carries from Andrew Poulter. We go right, then we come quick left, and it pretty much ends up with a sublime instinctive kick from Ross to the left. Falls right in Max Deegan's breadbasket, and he pretty much flops over the line, unconverted sadly, but 52-0, and that was pretty much, well, it was game over very much in the first half, but that was pretty much game over and full time. We did try to go for another one late on, but we knocked on and that full time. So 52-0. Yep, nilled them again.
Yeah, I mean, last week, the score going into the second half was only 19-0. There was still a bit of work to do to put the game away, but we came out and we owned those, what they call championship minutes, and we got to try, determined to get that try early in the second half. This time, we were a little more comfortable, but we still owned those minutes. But like you say, it was on the defensive side of things. There were, there was lots. Overall, it was great defense, but there were two series in particular that were crucial. I think one that was at the start of that second half, like you said, it ended with Tommy O'Brien jackling at the end of it, but it started at the 22 and just with tackle after tackle after tackle, they were just pushed back and they were getting towards the halfway line by the time the series was over. And there was one right towards the end as well. I think it was 72 to the 73rd minute, just series after series. So we're still doing it. But the game finished and whatever, and Glasgow just trying to get that duck egg off the scoreboard, which is literally all they can do. We're still in the zone. The bench has been cleared, but the 15 blue jerseys on the team are still working together. I mean, you look at a lot of teams, and their defensive strategy is basically they might have a good poaching number 7, and they're trying to manage the series of tackles and breakdowns to set up an opportunity for him to get over the ball. But this isn't. I mean, although Jordie Barrett himself was almost doing a one-man turnover clinic himself on the night, it was the team effort, the double tackles, the chop, the getting over the ball, and just the way they were managing how they were going into the tackles. It was so coordinated, and throughout the team, even when 8 new players come on, they're still doing it throughout the side, and we see it in the URC team as well. So it's obviously a culture throughout the squad, something they've been working on. And I think that was, and Nienaber himself said that was his focus coming to Leinster to get that, and it does. It seems to be getting the dividends in the matches that matter.
If you look at, especially when you're watching the match on a rewatch, and if you just fast forward it, you actually see the defense working as it actually does work, because you don't see it in real time. But when you fast forward it, it's like a buzzsaw. It's constantly hitting all the way across the line. It's awesome. Watch it. It really looks good.
Yeah, and you certainly can't tell from the stats, because I mean, people say, "Oh, they missed 36 tackles" or whatever it is. It's not about the missed tackles. It's about someone might get through a tackle, but there's 2 guys behind him that's ready to finish him off, and it's just the whole. If the whole is more than some of its parts, I think it's the easy way to describe the way Leinster are defending. And well, may I continue? Yes, great cameo from Mangan. Literally, he came on the pitch when there was a line out. They threw to him straight away. There's no better way to get him settled in, and he stole a line out as well down the other end. He really does look like a force, and it's great to see him getting the experience. Unfortunate for Matt Fagerson, that looked a pretty bad injury that he picked up during the game. I would wish him all the best. Now those leg injuries are terrible, especially for back rowers. Get them more often than most. So we do wish him all the best. But overall, it was a comfortable enough second half. What did you make of it, Tom?
Yeah, without sounding like I'm going to repeat exactly what you say, both of you have said. The highlight of the second half for me was that defensive standard. 8 minutes, like 45-0 up, I think, or 47-0 up. Just the absolute commitment to not give up a score. And it didn't matter if the game was 0-0 or 47 as it was. I was on the sort of south stand at a decent enough high level. And you could see exactly what Rich has described in his fast forward example, just the work rate from Leinster. So that just shows you the standards that they have. It's very easy there just for somebody to shut off slightly and try go in, but you'd be damn sure probably on Monday morning video review that's the first thing Jacques Nienaber would highlight. So they obviously have hugely respected international coach, and fear is the wrong word, because you're sort of empowered players to play that style and reach their own standards. So, but it's obvious that they're taking great pride in the defense. Last year probably was a little bit of a transition between the type of play we had before and Nienaber's, but you can definitely see it more pronounced this year, and just that work rate is just phenomenal. Just not able to give up, not wanting to concede a score. And shut Glasgow out completely. It's high quality stuff. And I'm glad both of you mentioned Mangan as well. Again, without repeating myself, did brilliantly when he came on. As you said, the line-out was thrown to him straight away, and he stole one later on. He's a big physical guy that likes to disrupt as well. You can't buy that size. and he's Irish, and he's young, and he's even probably more raw than Joe McCarthy was, but absolutely great to see how he progresses over the next few years. So yeah, it was more of a defensive situation in the second half, I would say. Just Glasgow had a little bit more possession and territory, but really we're going nowhere. I wouldn't be. It sounds very cocky to say Leinster decided to go into slight defensive mode to resharpen their defence before a potential semi-final on purpose. That would sound really arrogant to say that, but it seemed like that. Because Glasgow were beating team at half time, and Leinster were quite happy to go into that defensive mode and do more sort of countering than the all-out attack that they had in the first half. And it's visible again that Leinster's speed of defence seems to really up in inside their own 22, as Rich alluded to, and both he's alluded to, and then the pushing pressure on in the Glasgow zone 22. That there's a distinct speed of pace of what we're trying to do both sides of the ball in the 22. And if we have that plan in the middle section of the pitch, that's if we're making yards, great. If we're not, we're quite happy to use the four kickers that we had available to ping back the opposition. So that's definitely the style of play Leinster are going to go for the rest of the season. And yeah, very enjoyable match to be at, even though it was 52-0.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's really not much more that can be said. The final score, as we said, was Leinster 52, Glasgow 0. Well, elsewhere in the Champions Cup, there were comfortable enough wins on Saturday, first for Bordeaux against Munster, then Northampton Saints against Castres. But on Sunday, the all-top 14 affair between Toulon and Toulouse looked to be headed to extra time until Thomas Ramos atoned for some previous place kick pitfalls by slotting a penalty as the clock ran out to put the reigning champions back in the Final Four. They will now face more familiar opposition in Bordeaux, a repeat of last season's Top 14 final, which Bordeaux will very much be hoping doesn't repeat the scoreline. Meanwhile, Leinster will also have some deja vu as they face Northampton in another semi-final, although this time it will be in the Aviva Stadium on the evening of Saturday, May the 3rd. Meanwhile, in the Challenge Cup, Connacht waste a golden opportunity to reach a European final when, after having secured home advantage and seeing Racing 92 reduced to 14 men in the first half, they still couldn't turn it into enough points and fell short by 3 in Galway. The Parisians now play Lyon in the semi-finals, while Edinburgh will face Bath. And in the Women's Six Nations, Ireland had an amazing first half against the reigning champion Red Roses in Cork, fronting up brilliantly on defence before actually taking the lead with a try from skipper Amy Lee Costigan. But unfortunately, England struck back just before the break, and their bench proved too strong in the second half, with 6 further unanswered tries to follow. There were still, however, plenty of positives for Scott's Beeman side to bring forward to their final 2 matches against their fellow Celtic Challenge nations Wales and Scotland over the next 2 weekends. Going back to our feature match from Saturday, afterwards, Leo Cullen had this to say, quote, "Overall, it has been a great couple of weeks, but it's only ever about getting into the next round. And you can see the players want to come out and put on a show for the people who come out to support them," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Greg Kelly said this on our Facebook page, quote, "All in all, we played an hour of solid rugby and then pulled up in the last 20 to save legs," end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so this now brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Tom.
Yeah, I suppose final thoughts, and it's just a lot of the commentary post the game has been about the 2-0 games Leinster have had now and what's damage that's doing to the competition, etc., etc. Leinster can really only play what's in front of them. And at this stage of the season, it's all about being ruthless. So I have no issue with if teams come half-hearted to the Aviva, which Quins and Glasgow done to a certain degree. I think both things can be equally true, how good Leinster were and how poor they both were. You have to look beyond the scoreline, look beyond their effort to see how well Leinster's backs and forwards are connecting in attack, the shape of their attack, how fluid it is, the work rate. All those things, whether you're up against a good team or a bad team, still have to be there. And I think Leinster have shown a lot more of that in the last few weeks and previous to that than maybe this time last year. Even though the last year's, I think we beat a tired La Rochelle team in a quarterfinal after they came up from South Africa via Cork. So again, you can only play what's in front of you. I try to avoid speaking about Glasgow. But all I'd say on it is I thought it was a pretty shameless performance from them for, sometimes when you play it bad, you have to just say you play bad. Whether and Glasgow played bad, and for a team that I thought would have got the monkey off their back with a URC title, and in fairness, they bet Munster well in the semi-final and beat the Bulls well, something we actually didn't do the previous weeks before that. You would have thought that that sort of core belief would have been there, but they just look like a team. I know they were missing players and injuries, but that effort shouldn't go when and fight and dog shouldn't go just because you're missing key players. And just to mention our Southern cousins, Munster looked better out the gate at half time, but they stuck with it because you never know in a game. You have to keep in it and keep going on, because a team might get a red card, you might get a penalty try, which happened to Munster, and all of a sudden the momentum of the game shifts. Glasgow, sort of backhand compliment for Munster on sticking in with it, where Glasgow, who are a better team than Munster, that's the reality of it, and have shown that over the last few years, didn't. So I was very disappointed from them. And it's up for them to pick up their bootstraps and see what to do in the rest of the URC. But I liked a lot of what we've seen in the 2 games, on how we can counter, firstly, Northampton, and second of all, one of the French teams. I think, you look for improvement year on year. I think the second year or so of Nienbar's defence is becoming more visible, and it's definitely what you're getting out of it is a lot more visible than what you see. And the players we've brought on, as I said, they're an upgrade, in my opinion, on some of the players we had last year. And all we can do is hope is that bridges the gap where we've fallen short in the last few years. But I as well as leaving those key players aside that we've signed, it's just more so what I've seen from a cohesiveness and attacking intent, and forwards linking up with backs that I see a lot of light at the end of the, hopefully not a dark tunnel come May, but just in general play.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe to be devil's advocate for both Glasgow and even maybe Harlequins. I mean, I'm always harping on the way the season is structured. That you've got European games one week and domestic the next, and especially at this stage of the season, sometimes coaches do have to prioritize. You look at Glasgow; they're second in the URC. They want to hold on to those top 2 spots. Harlequins, they're a bit further down the Premiership, but they're still only 4 points off the playoffs. So they both still got things to, and then they both look at trips to play Leinster, who are definitely focused on the European. They know that are laser focused on the Europe, that maybe that is going to maybe diminish what they're bringing to the table. But still, from Leinster's point of view, there's nothing we can do about that. They've definitely played that they're in the European mindset. If we'd won narrowly, people would be going, even if we still won, but it was by a lot less, people would be saying, you can't be doing that against Toulouse. But we win by 50 points. It's like, well, that wasn't really a challenge. So Leinster aren't going to learn anything from that. So we really can't win. But I'd much rather win by 50 points and get the nil as well, and show that we can play for the 80 minutes.
I'm not sure there's an ideal score where Leinster had a great performance.
Yeah.
The other team were a great opposition.
No pleasing, no pleasing for sure. Anyway, listen, Rich, what did you think of it?
Keeping the ball alive. My take from that, from the 2 matches we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and it's almost as if our attack has been clunky throughout the season so far. We've seen little passages of play where you think, oh, it's coming back, but it hasn't. And then all of a sudden, last weekend, it clicked. I don't know whether that's coincidence, whether that's the playing in Europe knockout stages mentality. Possibly, that may very well be the case. And all of a sudden, the switch is the test match switch is back on. So it could very well be that. I rather suspect that that we've finally found the balance as between the defense, where it is now second nature, as opposed to you have to think about it, so that we can now focus once again on being able to attack and be fluid in attack. I think that's also got an awful lot to do with Tyler Blandell, and of course people like Snyman, Slimani, and Barrett. But with extremely honourable mentions to our own players who have been there for donkey's years and have come up through the ranks. So because everybody needs to buy into it, everybody needs to operate the system. So that's one of them. The other thing that Tom just also mentioned is the hunger, and the relentlessness and the desire to keep it to the nil. We've in the past we've been ahead in games by substantial for final game margins of 10, 15, 13 points, and we've let that slip. That there is not a single molecule in any of those players' minds that has that mentality any longer. Clearly, it's about when you're on top, when you've got your foot on their jugular, you press harder and until their head pops. It's that kind of hunger on both sides of the ball. So yeah, that's an upgrade. And of course, the other one is people, and we've spoken about Mangan, but it's any of them who slot into the system. It's the system. It's not the players. Some are greater and more talented than others, but they all buy into and operate within the system that has been set before them. So they believe in it, and when you've got a team believing in a system, then hopefully good things follow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just a great performance around, and we spoke a lot about the defense, but it is true that the attack is coming on. There is a good shape about it. And it does seem that it does have a ceiling. It is something that can get better, which is good. And hope, and we're getting into the business end of the season now, so hopefully it reaches those levels soon. But when you've got a defense that's as reliable as that, it does give you that kind of cushion and reliability. So overall, I think the balance is almost as good as you could possibly get, and just hopefully we see that more going forwards. Okay, well, that's brilliant. Many thanks again to Tom and Rich for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thank you.
Cheers, Rich. Cheers, Jeff.
Cheers.
As for our next batch of Harpin, we'll have our 80-plus column posting on Wednesday before turning our attention back to the URC and the visit of Ulster to the Aviva Stadium. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.